In the 10th year of loving Santino, I suddenly realized it all felt meaningless. I stopped clinging to him, stopped showing up in front of him, stopped sending him messages. I even went to meet the marriage candidate my family had arranged for a business alliance. The day my arranged match drove me home, Santino stepped out slowly from the shadows beneath my apartment building. His gaze shifted from my companion's face to mine, and then he let out a cold laugh. "So you broke up with me because you found a new target? Huh?" Chapter 01. The day I brought up breaking up with Santino, it was actually because of something trivial. That day, he won the third Best Actor trophy of his life. Santino debuted young, and the number of awards he had received over the years was impossible to count. By now, he handled occasions like this with perfect ease and composure. When he began giving his acceptance speech, the giant screen tactfully cut to me sitting in the center of the audience. I smiled politely and reservedly at the camera, then focused my eyes entirely on Santino. Holding the trophy, Santino's indifferent gaze swept over me as if I were just another irrelevant stranger in the crowd. Then he began thanking everyone according to the usual script. The director, the producers, the stage crew, even his assistant earned a mention in his speech. But from beginning to end, he never once said my name. From the first award he ever won until now, I had never appeared in his words of gratitude, even though everyone knew that if there was one person he should thank most for standing where he was today, it was me, not to mention all the resources and connections I had poured into him over the years. 2 years ago, while filming the movie that won him this award, he encountered a landslide. The roads were destroyed and buried under fallen rocks. I was the one who mobilized every connection I had to assemble a helicopter rescue team and fly directly into the disaster zone. I was a pampered rich heiress who had never suffered a day in her life. Yet I stayed beside the rescue team the entire time. In the end, everyone else was close to giving up. But I didn't. Afraid the shovels would injure anyone buried beneath the mud, I dug with my bare hands instead. My hands were torn open, bloody, and covered in wounds before I finally pulled him out from the buried air raid shelter. Later, even the doctors said that if they had been even a little later, just a little, he would not have survived. I hadn't cried when I first heard he was missing. I hadn't cried while rushing there with the rescue team. I hadn't cried even when everyone around me had already started preparing themselves for the worst and gently urging me to accept my grief. But at that moment, holding the unconscious Santino in my arms, I finally broke down sobbing uncontrollably, grateful that fate had not taken him away from me. Even his fans, who had always disliked me, were comforting each other online beforehand this time, pretending to be gracious and saying that if Santino mentioned me in his acceptance speech, they could understand. But tonight, there was still no mention of me. It was actually such a small thing. I didn't care whether he thanked me in this glamorous arena of fame and vanity. What hurt was realizing, through every deliberate act of neglect from him, that no matter how much I had done for him, the only person ever moved by it was myself. In Santino's world, I was probably meant to remain an unspoken role forever, a silent character who knew her place, a background decoration in his life, not someone who appeared during his happiest moments to remind him that the reason he stood where he did today was because he had a girlfriend powerful enough to pave the road for him. When he finished speaking, the people around us glanced toward me curiously. I lowered my eyes without any expression, just as I always had before. Everyone knew I would endure it. After all, with my power and influence, I could have forced Santino to say my name on that crowded award stage the very first time he won a trophy. The spectators had long grown used to it. They thought this time was no different from every other time before. No one knew that beneath the dazzling flashes of the cameras, what surged inside me was exhaustion. I was tired of it all. Chapter 02. After the award ceremony ended, Santino and I went back together. He was the center of attention tonight, the hottest name in the room, so he had already arranged for his assistant to drive an empty car away as a decoy to lure off the reporters crowding outside. The two of us sat in my glacier white Bentley. He drove while I sat in the passenger seat scrolling through social media. The trending topics were predictable enough. I tapped into Santino's fan forum. His fans were all hosting giveaways to celebrate. One of his biggest fan accounts, with hundreds of thousands of followers, was especially excited. She reposted an older post she had made before the ceremony. "Let's make a bet. Do you think the Best Actor winner will mention Francesca in his speech tonight? Even though the chances are high, I'm still betting he won't." Her repost caption now read, "Yay. I won. So happy. I'm picking 10 people in the comments to win the perfume Santino endorses. The perfume cost several $1,000s a bottle. Even random passersby were happily reposting it. Like the whole world was celebrating together. I smiled faintly. I rarely lost control of my emotions, and I almost never bothered arguing with Santino's fans over things like this. Back when he had just debuted, his fans had flooded the internet with edited funeral photos of me. Obsessive stalker fans had even mailed animal corpses to my house. I endured all of it without changing expression. But today, suddenly, I didn't want to endure it anymore. I picked up Santino's trophy and took a photo inside the car, deliberately calculating. I angled the trophy toward the driver's seat so that through the gap along the edge of the award, part of Santino's sharply defined fingers gripping the steering wheel could be seen. Then I posted, "My head hurts. Where should I put this trophy?" The comments refreshed rapidly. Some amused onlookers were spamming laughter. Some of Santino's antis mocked sarcastically. "This is killing me. They're out there doing giveaways while your idol's trophy is already in his woman's hands. You really shouldn't have pissed off his girlfriend. Once she gets upset, isn't it still the man himself who has to coax her?" I paused when I saw that comment. Santino had never coaxed me before, because he knew that no matter what emotions I had, I would always swallow them myself and then appear in front of him again as if nothing had happened. In the nearly 10 years since we met and got together, he had never once taken the initiative to get close to me. The most intimate physical contact we ever had stopped at holding hands. And every time I touched his hand, his whole body stiffened with resistance so obvious it was impossible to ignore. Eventually, I stopped initiating it too. Fine. I could just treat it as some kind of platonic relationship. Thinking that way, the tiny bit of satisfaction I had gotten from upsetting his fans instantly faded too. Disinterested, I tossed both my phone and the trophy aside, then turned to look at Santino. Both of his hands rested on the steering wheel as he focused on the road ahead. The lines of his profile looked like something the creator had sculpted with favoritism. His nose was high and sharp, but my favorite thing had always been his eyelashes. Long and thick, framing his dark eyes like flourishing branches in spring, making them seem impossibly deep because his features were so striking and intense. Even when he looked at someone expressionlessly, it still seemed as though there was tenderness lingering in his gaze. I had been trapped in those eyes for nearly 10 years. Santino and I had never been people with much to say to each other. Tonight, I had nothing I wanted to say either, so we stayed silent all the way home. I was exhausted. A kind of weariness seemed to surge up from somewhere deep inside me, making everything feel unbearably meaningless. Afraid I might say something irreversible in the state of exhaustion and impulse, I went to take a shower first. When I came out, Santino was looking down at his phone. Only when he heard my footsteps did he lift his head. I still couldn't read his expression. His voice was cold, detached, like he was simply stating a fact. "Francesca, she's just my fan. She only posted because she was happy." Was it really worth targeting her over this? I was baffled. I picked up my phone and only then realized he was talking about that incident. My own post hadn't caused much attention, but the big fan account that had reposted the giveaway had been banned. Its page now showed as unavailable. He thought I did it. His fans thought so too. They were all mocking me for being rich and powerful, for bullying others with my status, for being petty and vindictive. I locked my phone screen and looked at Santino tiredly. Then I explained just as tiredly. It wasn't me. He smiled indifferently, clearly unconcerned whether I was telling the truth or not. Chapter 03. I opened my mouth, then gave up. There was no point explaining if he was never going to believe me anyway. Over the years, I had already taken the blame for countless things. One more hardly mattered. The impression I left on him when we first met had lasted all these years. In Santino's eyes, I would always be the spoiled rich heiress who bullied others with her power and acted arrogantly. But the anger that had been building inside me ever since the award ceremony still refused to settle, especially seeing that expression on his face now. So after a pause, I still couldn't hold it back. I tried my best to control my emotions and asked calmly, "Santino, we've been together for so many years. In your heart, am I always just some spoiled rich girl who throws her weight around?" Santino looked up at me. He said nothing. He only stared quietly. But the answer was already painfully obvious in that silence. And in that exact moment, I suddenly didn't want to continue anymore. I looked at him. Santino looked back at me. When our eyes met, his expression was calm and detached, as it always was whenever he faced me. He never showed extra emotion toward me. Even years ago, when I had completely broken down and smashed every antique vase in the house while hysterically asking whether he loved me or not, he had worn the same calm expression, cold, detached, standing to the side like it had nothing to do with him while he watched me lose control. And then he had said, "Francesca, you already know the answer. Why insist on digging deeper?" After that, I never asked him again. And now, it was the same. I looked into his eyes. They were dark and unfathomable. I couldn't see emotion in them, couldn't see warmth, couldn't even see myself reflected there. I couldn't describe what I felt in that instant. It was like a balloon that had been blown fuller and fuller until it was about to burst, only for all the air to suddenly escape at once. I felt ridiculous. In fact, I actually laughed. I just laughed softly like that. And in the same instant, I made a decision. I heard my own voice, calm beyond belief. "Santino, let's break up." In the nearly 10 years since we first met and got together, this was the first time I had ever brought up breaking up with him, because Santino would never be the one to say it first. I remembered a long time ago, back when Santino had just started transitioning from television dramas into films. I had handed him the best resources possible, supported him so aggressively that even my father couldn't stand watching anymore. Not too harshly, but with pointed meaning. He reminded me, "Francesca, he doesn't love you." At that age, I was recklessly fearless for love. How could I possibly listen? I asked my father, "If he doesn't love me, then why doesn't he leave me?" I was too young to understand then. Only when I grew older did I finally realize the truth. Santino would never leave me. Even if he didn't love me, he would never take the initiative to break up with me. Because his mother had once been a minor actress under one of my family company's subsidiaries, she had spent her whole life playing insignificant supporting roles without ever becoming famous. Until she gave birth to Santino. When Santino was little, he had already started appearing in scattered advertisements. Then, during high school, he exploded into fame overnight after playing a young emperor in a historical drama. That just happened to be the age when I first understood what it meant to fall in love. For the daughter of a powerful capitalist family, wanting to meet an actor she had fallen for at first sight was the easiest thing in the world. So when I was 16 years old, the newly famous Santino was respectfully brought before me by his mother like a carefully prepared gift. I still remember that day. I wore a white princess dress as I slowly descended the extravagant spiral staircase in my family mansion, step by step with deliberate elegance. Finally, I stopped halfway down the staircase. Above my head hung a dazzling crystal chandelier. I knew the light shining from there would make me look even prettier. And so I looked down from above at the teenage Santino and asked with forced maturity and teenage bravado, "So you're Santino, the one who played the young emperor?" At the sound of my voice, he lifted his eyes toward me from beside his mother. Just one glance, and suddenly, I thought of a line from the ancient poetry I had read in my youth. "A radiant white steed stands within the silent valley, with but a bundle of fresh grass. That graceful soul shines like jade." Back then, I never imagined that single glance would trap me for so many years, and I never imagined that one day I would grow disgusted by the fact that I had fallen for him at first sight in my innocent youth. Chapter 04. I was tired of it. And for me, that was an almost unbelievable thing. From the very first moment I saw Santino at 16, I had been interested in him. Then little by little, I got to know him, fell in love with him, confessed to him, and got together with him. He had never rejected me, and because of that, I once believed ours was the most beautiful beginning to a love story. What I didn't know was that he had only gone along with it because his mother asked him to endure it. His task was simple: keep this spoiled heiress happy, never disobey any of my requests. Now that I thought about it from his perspective, it honestly sounded suffocating. That was why, when it came to me, he was never proactive, but never rejecting either. Even if one day, on a whim, I had suddenly said, "Santino, let's get married," he probably would have calmly taken his ID documents and gone with me to the marriage office without objection. That was his attitude toward me. By the time I finally understood everything, I had already been trapped for years. I could no longer leave easily and gracefully. At the time, I thought, whether he loved me or not didn't matter. As long as I wanted him, he would always belong to me in the end. But I was tired. Forget it. Just forget it. Let him be free. Rumors that Santino and I had broken up began slowly spreading across social media about a month later. According to the gossip, an insider claimed that Santino and I had split. At first, no one cared. After all, during all the years Santino and I had been together, there hadn't just been hundreds of breakup rumors, there had probably been thousands. From the very beginning of Santino's career, my shadow had always been beside him. The nation's hottest superstar actor and the only daughter of the CEO of the entertainment industry's largest talent agency. A topic like that would never lack attention or traffic. Countless people both inside and outside the entertainment industry had always been curious about one thing. When would Francesca and Santino finally break up? And honestly, it was strange. It felt like no one had ever truly believed that Santino and I would make it to the end together. Maybe everyone could see it. Santino had never loved me. Even now, after Santino had become a 3-time Best Actor winner, any slight disturbance involving the messy love story between him and me could still trigger enormous public attention. At first, it was just confusion from some of Santino's fans. Strange. Why has Francesca been completely quiet lately? I've noticed it too. Even the Best Actor Studio account hasn't released new promo content in ages. I don't know why, but I've had this uneasy feeling lately. It's like the silence before a storm. Feels like something big is about to happen. Then came a secretly filmed video from a party. That was probably the 3rd week after Santino and I broke up. I had been invited to the birthday party of a business partner's only daughter. I wasn't very close to her, though I had heard things about her before. We all moved in the same elite circles. After all, apparently, while studying abroad, she had been rebellious and wild, living completely without restraint. El angulo de la grabación clandestina era extrañísimo. Todo la imagen temblaba, pero el sonido se escuchaba con claridad. Y aún así podía verse aquella heredera sentada en el sofá frente a mi rostro indifferent. The heiress asked me, "Hey, Francesca, I'm pretty interested in your Best Actor boyfriend Santino. Mind lending him to me for a couple days?" In the video, I lowered my head and took a sip of champagne. Then, in an extremely calm tone, I replied, "He's not my boyfriend anymore." And the video cut off right there. The person who uploaded it posted it on a small social media platform with the caption, "What's going on? Francesca actually broke up with Santino?" Although the post was quickly deleted, someone had already saved the video. Soon, gossip accounts everywhere started spreading it, until eventually, it climbed onto the trending charts. Neither Santino nor I responded. Chapter 05. It wasn't until 3 days later, on Valentine's Day, that someone asked Santino during an online interaction what his plans were for the holiday. Santino's studio account personally reposted the question and replied, "Our boss is a single dog now, so he won't be joining the Valentine's Day excitement." That was basically an official breakup announcement. The response caused an uproar. Countless people were shocked and gossiping about it. Others celebrated wildly. And, of course, there were always some spectators who loved stirring up drama. Santino officially announced the breakup? Francesca, that possessive rich heiress, must be losing her mind right now. But I didn't lose my mind, nor did I respond to the probing questions from friends trying to test the waters. I simply closed the webpage calmly, as though I had just read news completely unrelated to me. After that, I never paid attention to entertainment industry news again. Truthfully, I had always been someone who preferred peace and quiet by nature. These past years, it was only because of Santino that I had remained so high profile in the entertainment world. I had actually contributed a great deal to the level of attention and popularity surrounding Santino over the years. But in reality, I never truly enjoyed exposing myself to the gaze of the public. I thought this would probably be the last time Santino's name and mine appeared side by side on the trending charts. Unexpectedly, my father called me home anyway. When I arrived, he was bent over in the garden examining his ghost orchids. He loved orchids. The kind of ghost orchids sold at auctions for tens of millions each. He kept an entire garden full of them. Though, of course, they were all artificially cultivated. Wild ones were illegal. Back when I had first gotten together with Santino, my father had never stopped me. At his level of power and wealth, All he needed was for me to be capable of protecting the family empire. He didn't particularly need me to expand it further. So at the time, he had simply told me, "Francesca, as long as you're happy." Of course, while I watched him, he casually snapped the stem of a perfectly blooming ghost orchid in the garden and said lightly, "But remember this, no matter how much you like something, it should only ever remain a hobby. Never confuse the priorities." Unfortunately, I hadn't listened. I threw myself into love headfirst and only now, after crashing into wall after wall, had finally learned how to let go. I stood obediently beside my father. He glanced up at me and smiled with the same gentle warmth as always. "The people at the agency already told me everything, so this time, have you truly figured things out? Or is this just another lover's quarrel?" I lowered my eyes, somewhat listless. "You know me, Dad. I never do things halfway." At that, my father laughed. When he was younger, his methods had been ruthless and decisive like thunder itself. Yet now, in old age, he had somehow become more open-minded instead. Rather than criticizing me, he comforted me. "If life always went exactly the way we wanted, wouldn't it be terribly boring? Good that you've figured it out. The most important thing in life is knowing how to pick things up and how to let them go. Don't drag things out endlessly." He looked at me and added with meaningful emphasis, "But Francesca, now that you've let go, don't ever come tell me one day that you want to pick it back up again." I smiled faintly and turned my head to look at the ghost orchids beneath my gaze. My tone was calm. "You underestimate me too much, Dad. Your blood runs through my veins. Once I make a decision, I act decisively. Either I don't do it at all, or once I do, I never turn back. I only spent these 10 years doing this once. Of course I won't pick it up again." My father smiled and patted my shoulder. Then he said, "Good. Your Uncle Han invited me to dinner recently. I heard his sons will be there too. Clear your schedule next Saturday and come with me." This was the beginning of introducing marriage alliance candidates to me. We both understood it without saying it aloud. I nodded indifferently and agreed. I thought, it really was time for me to walk the path I was supposed to walk. Santino and I should both return to the places where we truly belonged. Chapter 06. On Saturday, I accompanied my father to a business dinner. Strictly speaking, the Han family and ours couldn't really be considered old family friends. The Hans had built their fortune through emerging industries and only truly rose to prominence in recent years. But their momentum had become extremely strong lately. My father valued their potential and intended to invest, and the two men had gotten along quite well during discussions. It just so happened that Uncle Han heard my father had a daughter and jokingly suggested letting the younger generation get acquainted. My father simply went along with it naturally. Doesn't necessarily have to be matchmaking or a marriage alliance. My father told me before we left, "Just think of it as getting out to relax and meet more people. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." Originally, I thought the evening would be unbearably dull, but Uncle Han's younger son was extremely charming and smooth-talking. He knew exactly how to take care of his female companion with thoughtful attention and perfect manners, so the atmosphere never became awkward. On the drive home that night, my father asked what I thought of the Han brothers. I considered it for a moment before replying. That younger son, Oberon Han, really is eloquent and good at reading people. He's incredibly attentive toward women. I couldn't help laughing as I added, with skills like that, he definitely didn't develop them without years of experience fighting his way through the dating scene. My father laughed too. And the other one? The other one was named Lissandro Han. Honestly, my impression of Lissandro wasn't bad at all. Compared to his silver-tongued younger brother, he spoke much less and carried himself with a restrained, gentlemanly air. But being quiet didn't mean he lacked social skills. Every time I deliberately teased Oberon, Lissandro would step in at exactly the right moment, polite without being overly eager. It felt more like casual conversation between ordinary friends. He never fawned over me just because I was the investor's daughter. In that regard, he handled himself far better than his younger brother, who only knew how to charm women, and I could tell he was very knowledgeable. But just before voicing my opinion of him, I suddenly laughed for some reason, because of how favorable my first impression of Lissandro was, and because he had appeared at such a perfect time. I suddenly thought, if this were a romance novel, Lysandro would probably be the true male lead arriving dramatically out of nowhere, the one who helps the heroine recover from heartbreak and humiliates the shallow ex-boyfriend she once foolishly loved. Unfortunately, I wasn't the heroine of some romance novel. Lysandro wasn't the destined male lead arriving late according to the plot. And Santino certainly wasn't the ex-boyfriend waiting to be humiliated. Love didn't work that conveniently. You couldn't simply say goodbye to one person today and immediately find your perfect soulmate tomorrow, then effortlessly begin a new relationship that would stay blissfully in love forever. I simply didn't dislike Lysandro, and our first conversation had left me with a favorable impression of him. Once you miss the age when you're capable of giving the most passionate, sincere, unconditional kind of love, the real world that remains is nothing but weighing pros and cons and maximizing benefits. So after thinking about it, I told my father, if I really had to choose one, Lysandro is a bit more pleasing to the eye. My father burst out laughing. What nonsense are you talking about? Sounds like you're choosing royal consorts. It's not like I'm asking you to pick a boyfriend. Then he paused and added, your Uncle Han and I have basically finished discussing the investment matter. I'm planning to hand the follow-up work to you so you can get some practical experience. Since you seem to like Lysandro more, I'll mention it to your Uncle Han and have you coordinate directly with him. I looked confused. Aren't they both Han family sons? Why would you need to specifically mention that? My father smiled and explained. The two brothers have different mothers. The one you took a liking to is the eldest son. Sean Han had him with his first wife before he became successful. Later, Sean cheated during the marriage and had the younger son with another woman outside the marriage. The age gap between the brothers actually isn't very large. Sean's current wife is the mistress who successfully replaced the original wife. So naturally the eldest son isn't valued as much as the younger one. Then my father deliberately teased me. But things are different now. Since you, this wealthy young heiress, have taken a liking to Lysandro, Sean will probably have to reevaluate his eldest son's status and worth. I turned to look at my father. In truth, my father was an extremely traditional and devoted man. Back then, my mother had built everything alongside him from nothing. Later, after his wealth and status skyrocketed, countless women tried desperately to climb into his bed, but he never spared any of them a second glance. The year my mother died, my father became critically ill himself and nearly followed her. If not for the fact that he still had me to care for, he probably wouldn't have survived it. Even after recovering, he spent more than half a year shut inside his study, barely leaving the house, writing poetry alone. 10 years apart in life and death, both boundless in sorrow. Only a year later did he finally force himself back into social life. Even then, he still never touched another woman. Chapter 07. Back when Santino filmed his first movie, I had thrown money at the project without hesitation. Someone once tried gossiping about it in front of my father, but my father only laughed heartily and said my hopeless devotion clearly came from him. Now, seeing him deliberately looking entertained while assigning me to work with Lysandro Han, I guess he probably also wanted to slap the smug younger Han son in the face a little. I knew my father looked down on the son born from the mistress who had replaced the original wife. Although my father was a businessman, there had always been a kind of old-school honor and boldness about him. This investment project, as my father said, already had all the major framework and conditions negotiated. All I really needed to do was follow up on the contracts and oversee some of the later implementation details. To be safe, he even temporarily assigned his chief secretary to assist me so I could consult her anytime I encountered something unclear. It was practically a foolproof deal. Even so, I still wanted to understand every detail myself. I didn't like the feeling of having everything controlled by others. Only when I understood things thoroughly myself could I avoid being deceived. The contract clauses had already been carefully reviewed word by legal teams from both sides. Yet even then, I still stayed up late studying by lamplight, burying myself in stacks of business documents for over a week. When I finally emerged from the study with panda-like dark circles under my eyes but an oddly refreshed spirit, my father lowered his newspaper and said to the housekeeper, "Would you look at that? The sun really is rising from the west today." Everyone in the room burst into laughter. Aunt Cheong immediately began fussing about making nourishing soup for me. While drinking the soup, I sat down and casually opened my phone to scroll for a while. Maybe it was coincidence. I hadn't checked my social media feed in a very long time. Yet the moment I opened it today, I saw a post from the wealthy heiress whose birthday banquet I had attended last time. She had posted a selfie. In the background was Santino attending a luxury brand event. Her caption read, "Successfully met my idol." For a few seconds, I felt dazed, because ever since the breakup, this was the first time I had seen Santino again. I was the kind of person who believed things should be clean and decisive. Once something ended, it ended. I never dragged things out or stayed emotionally entangled. And once I truly made a decision, I never looked back. Besides, over the past month, I had been constantly busy attending business functions and learning under my father. My schedule had been packed so tightly that I genuinely hadn't had much mental energy left to think about him. So suddenly seeing him again without warning gave me a strange feeling, like a lifetime had passed. But I didn't dwell on it. It felt as though, in just one short month, we had already entered two completely different worlds. Mine was now a battlefield of business, full of hidden knives, schemes, and calculated deception. His was still the glamorous entertainment world of romance, fame, luxury, and desire. We no longer belonged to the same world. And apparently, cutting ties with someone could really be this simple. I didn't care much about it. I turned off my phone and continued drinking my soup. Just as I finished and prepared to contact Lissandro, a red notification suddenly appeared on my social media feed. +1. I opened it. The heiress had tagged me in the comments of her post and asked, "Francesca, I never go after my friends' boyfriends. You and Santino really broke up, right? Then you won't mind if I pursue him?" I scrolled upward and saw that one of our mutual acquaintances had commented beneath her post earlier. "Santino? Everyone knows he's Francesca's personal property. There's even an old saying for it. What was it again? Alright, a golden house hiding a beauty." Teresa, are you seriously planning to steal a man from Francesca? Chapter 08. There were many more comments teasing her in the same way, which was why she directly tagged me beneath them. In truth, ever since I told Santino we were breaking up, I had never contacted him again, nor had I appeared in front of him again. As for blocking or deleting him, I simply felt there was no real need for it. Even the belongings I had left at his place were handled through a list sent to my assistant so she could pack them up for me. Everything, including all the little things he had casually given me over the years, the small gifts I had once treasured so carefully. Every single one of them was hauled directly to the dump and incinerated. I had acted with such ruthless finality, such all-or-nothing determination, because I truly intended to sever everything between us completely. Originally, I didn't plan to reply at all, but after thinking about it, I realized I had never publicly stated my stance. And honestly, constantly being tied together in other people's eyes with someone who no longer had anything to do with me was troublesome. Besides, Santino probably didn't want to be associated with me anymore either, so I replied with just 2 words. "Be my guest." Teresa replied quickly. She sent a smiling emoji and said, "Then I'm really going to make my move." I didn't respond again, but later that night, just before going to sleep, I noticed that Santino had liked her post, so they had already added each other privately this quickly. Teresa really moved fast when it came to pursuing someone. I didn't know what kind of mindset Santino had. Santino had always lived a rather ascetic life. He never posted on social media and rarely interacted with anyone online. Throughout all the years we had been together, he had never once liked or commented on any of my posts. Though, to be fair, I rarely posted anything myself, so seeing his like beneath Teresa's post was honestly quite surprising. Holding my phone, I thought that Santino had probably also seen my "Be My Guest" reply to Teresa. He was probably feeling relieved now. Francesca, the woman who had hidden him away in a golden house for all these years, had finally decided to let him go. I laughed quietly to myself. Then I whispered softly to my phone, "Congratulations on your freedom, Santino." Chapter 09. My first collaboration with Lissandro went very smoothly. Honestly, Lissandro and I were actually quite similar in personality. We were both people with a strong sense of distance and personal boundaries. Neither of us liked overly familiar people or those who lacked a sense of limits. So interacting with each other felt naturally comfortable, little by little, despite both of us having calm and restrained personalities. By the time the contract was signed, we had somehow become the kind of friends who could occasionally tease each other and joke around. Of course, I also saw Oberon. He was the sort of true villain who never bothered hiding what he felt. Perhaps he couldn't understand why, despite the fact that he had been the one constantly making me laugh that day. I had ultimately handed the opportunity to his quiet and reserved older brother instead. So every time he saw me, he wore that fake smile that never reached his eyes, looking bitter, calculating, and unwilling to accept it. Meanwhile, I greeted him as calmly as ever, with his level of scheming and narrow-mindedness. This was probably as far as he would ever go in life. The signing ceremony between Lissandro and me had also been quite grand. Once market capital reached a certain scale, even the slightest shift in direction could affect the economy and stock prices. This was the first time I had publicly appeared as the lead figure behind an investment worth several billion. The amount itself wasn't huge, but this was only the beginning. More people were interested in what my appearance this time represented. Was my father preparing to retire? Was he planning to hand his business empire over to me? Did the partnership between our family and the Han family signal the beginning of a brand new commercial alliance? I didn't care much about any of it. Business and finance sounded sophisticated, but most young people nowadays barely paid attention to such things. I only cared about international trends and global dynamics. Finally, during the last stage of the contract signing, flashes exploded everywhere around us. Lissandro and I each held a copy of the agreement while smiling toward the cameras, marking the successful conclusion of the first phase of cooperation. After the media dispersed, Lissandro invited me to dinner. We had actually eaten together many times already, but those had all been business negotiations. Every meal had involved assistants and lawyers sitting around us, with every sentence carefully measured before it was spoken. This time, however, he stood beneath the glittering lights of the skyscrapers and smiled at me. Lissandro was very handsome. His demeanor carried a restrained sharpness and understated confidence, making him both pleasant to look at and easy to be around. He told me, a personal invitation, no business talk, just gratitude. I laughed and teased him openly. Then I'm definitely going to extort an expensive meal out of you. He took me to a private courtyard restaurant. One dish in particular, a braised pork belly with rouge fish, was so delicious that I completely abandoned any concern for elegance or table manners. Sitting across from me, Lissandro couldn't help smiling. I really should take a picture of this and sell it to the editor-in-chief who praised you so extravagantly in the business news today. I glanced at him slowly, then replied with complete seriousness. In that case, he'd probably only praise me even more for being my father's daughter. I'm simply unconcerned with trivial details. The two of us burst out laughing. Honestly, Lissandro was the type of person perfectly suited to being a friend. Whether talking or spending time together, neither of us needed to pretend or put on an act. Everything felt relaxed and natural. I liked this kind of atmosphere. Easy, comfortable. I had assumed Lissandro would spend the evening venting to me about his hardships, about the early death of his biological mother, about the humiliation and unfairness he suffered, about the ugliness and cruelty of his stepmother and half-brother. But he never mentioned any of it. Instead, he only told me stories from his travels around the world. The way he spoke was captivating. I listened attentively and kept asking eagerly. And then? What happened next? By the end of the meal, I still felt unsatisfied, as though I wanted to keep listening. Only when dinner was over and he stood to walk me home did he finally turn his head slightly and lower his eyes toward me. The constant smile in his eyes had faded. Distant city lights reflected within them now. His tone remained calm, but there was unmistakable sincerity hidden underneath when he asked, "Francesca, why me?" I tilted my head and seriously thought about it for a moment before honestly answering, "Because I don't like your brother." He clearly hadn't expected that answer. He froze briefly before suddenly laughing out loud. The laughter was bright and open, vibrating faintly from deep in his chest. For the first time, he truly looked carefree and genuinely happy. Then he said, "What a coincidence. Looks like we've found another thing we have in common." Chapter 10. I never expected to trend again, and not in the business and finance section, but in entertainment gossip. The headline featured 3 huge photos. The title was written in the most exaggerated clickbait style imaginable. Top-tier heiress and 3-time best actor end 10-year romance was there. Breakup caused by a business-marriage alliance rather than a peaceful separation? The accompanying photos were even more suggestive. One was of Lissandro and me standing side by side holding a business contract while shaking hands. Another was a secretly taken photo of Lissandro opening the car door for me after dinner and placing one hand above the roof of the car so I wouldn't bump my head while getting inside. Although the photo was blurry, it somehow captured him looking exceptionally graceful and gentlemanly. The entire image was visually pleasing. The third photo was an old picture of Santino and me together. The article itself was written dramatically and skillfully. It started with the 10 years I spent chasing after Santino, then shifted toward the investment cooperation between the Han family and mine, before moving on to describe how perfectly matched Lissandro and I appeared in both status and appearance. Finally, the article speculated with lingering excitement. Perhaps the breakup between Santino and Francesca wasn't because Francesca had finally grown tired of her one-sided love and Santino's indifference, as rumors claimed. Perhaps it was because Francesca was preparing for a business marriage alliance with the Han family and had therefore chosen to abandon the best actor instead. Honestly, the writer's storytelling ability was excellent. The entire thing was thrilling and immersive, written as though the author were personally one of the three people involved. To be fair, if I weren't one of the people in the story, I probably would have enjoyed the gossip too. The twists and reversals were dramatic enough to keep anyone entertained. So naturally, reposts and comments exploded almost instantly, practically threatening to crash the servers. I casually glanced through the comments. At the top were all the fan-controlled posts promoting Santino's newest drama project. Buried among them was one ordinary comment from a passerby. The tone sounded hesitant and cautious. "Help, am I the only one who thinks Francesca smiling beside this man actually looks incredibly well-matched and equal?" I burst out laughing, treating it like a joke. I screenshotted the comment and sent it to Lissandro. But the instant I sent it, I suddenly felt that something about it wasn't quite right. So I immediately unsent the message. Still, Lissandro replied almost instantly with a single. After pausing briefly, I apologized to him for dragging him into the mess of my romantic gossip. His response, however, was completely unconcerned. He's the one with bad taste. Who exactly he referred to, and what he meant by bad taste, was honestly a little too ambiguous. I felt that if I responded further, the conversation might become flirtatious in a way I didn't want. I actually liked the relaxed friendship Lissandro and I had now. There were already business interests tangled between us, and if I wanted to preserve the comfort of our current relationship, then making things more complicated wasn't a good idea. So I didn't reply. I didn't take the gossip seriously anyway. The internet moved fast these days. Every day there were countless news stories and scandals. One topic faded while another rose. People's attention spans were scattered. Nobody focused on a single story forever. What I didn't expect was that a week later, this matter would suddenly flare up again. Santino's new relationship was exposed. I didn't learn this because I cared enough to follow it. I learned because the new girlfriend wasn't Teresa, the same Teresa who had publicly tagged me before to ask whether I minded her pursuing Santino. Instead, rumors said it was Augustina, the female lead from Santino's newest film. As a result, a whole group of friends immediately came to gossip with me. At that point, it became impossible not to know. In the leaked photos, Santino and Augustina sat together inside a sports car while waiting at a red light. One of Santino's hands rested on the steering wheel. The other reached across toward the passenger seat. His fingers tightly interlocked with Augustina's. Santino and I had been photographed together countless times before. Naturally, many of those photos had also been taken while we were inside a car, but because the vehicle windows were covered with heavily tinted one-way privacy film, outsiders could never see what was happening inside. So only I knew this. During all the countless times we rode together in the same car, Santino had never once, reached his hand toward the passenger seat to hold mine. Not even during those long waits at red lights. Not even once. Chapter 11. Santino's fans were not nearly as heartbroken as people might have imagined. Instead, they joyfully welcomed the new sister-in-law, flooding social media with blessings and wishing the couple happiness. How strange. I had always tried my best to stay low-key, never acting possessive or craving attention. Yet Santino's fans had hated me for no reason from the very beginning. The way they behaved made it seem as though anyone in the world could be with Santino. Anyone except me. That irrational hatred. Santino had always been a low-profile person, so the fact that he suddenly drove a flashy sports car around without caring about paparazzi exposure made many people suspicious. A lot of people speculated that the relationship reveal was probably just promotional hype for his new movie. Truth and lies mixed together endlessly. In any case, I had no interest in paying attention to any of it. Time passed in a blur. The next time I saw Santino was a month later. He was waiting downstairs outside my apartment building. Actually, when I first returned, I hadn't noticed him at all. This apartment complex was my private residence. Security was extremely strict. An entry required rigorous resident verification. The guards probably recognized Santino, which was why they had allowed him inside. What made things awkward was that, on that particular night, Lissandro had been working overtime with me on a business proposal. After we finished a late-night meal together, he drove me home. Just as we reached downstairs and were about to say goodbye, I suddenly heard someone call my name, Francesca. I turned toward the direction of the voice, probably to avoid attracting attention. After all, he was a major celebrity. Santino had been standing hidden in the shadows near the landscaping. Only now did he slowly step beneath the streetlight, revealing himself. I was a little surprised. It had already been nearly 5 or 6 months since the last time I saw him, since the day I asked him to break up with me. Now he walked toward us slowly, step by step. Only when he stopped about 2 or 3 steps away from me did he finally lift his gaze. His expression was calm. His eyes swept briefly across Lissandro before quickly returning to my face. Almost instantly, Lissandro shifted slightly in front of me in a protective gesture. Still, his tone remained courteous and impeccably polite as he asked Santino, "Sir, waiting here this late at night, is there something you need?" Santino stayed silent for a very long time. Then, for some reason, he suddenly laughed at himself softly. His gaze lingered on Lissandro's face for a while before finally turning back to me. His voice was cold. I couldn't tell what emotion hid beneath it as he asked, "Francesca, did you break up with me because you found this new target?" Before Lissandro could speak, I reached out and lightly tugged on his sleeve. Then I smiled at him politely. "Lissandro, it's all right. This is a personal matter." For some reason, the distant and reserved expression Lissandro wore toward Santino dimmed slightly for an instant, but he quickly concealed it so fast that I almost wondered if I had imagined it. Ever the gentleman, he respected my privacy and stepped back gracefully. "Then I won't disturb you further. Francesca, if you need anything, call me." I told him okay. Before leaving, Lissandro glanced once more at Santino, who had stood there the entire time watching us coldly from the sidelines. Lissandro gave him a polite nod as a greeting. Santino responded with nothing, only cold silence. Chapter 12. I kept watching until Lissandro's figure disappeared completely into the shadows before finally turning back toward Santino. Santino let out a sarcastic cold laugh. "Can't bear to see him leave?" I ignored the mockery and replied calmly, "Santino, whether you believe me or not, I only met Lissandro after breaking up with you. We are simply business partners. I won't allow you to make those kinds of assumptions and slander him." There was a warning hidden in my tone. Honestly, I rarely spoke to Santino like this. Yet for some reason, instead of becoming colder, his expression gradually softened under my warning. He looked at me and took another step forward, as though he wanted to grab my hand. "Francesca." Almost instinctively, I stepped backward to avoid him. The movement happened entirely subconsciously. Only after doing it did I realize what I had done. Santino froze in place. For a fleeting moment, something like hurt confusion flashed across his face. If this had been before, I would already have softened. But now, I felt absolutely nothing. I was only puzzled by why he had come here tonight at all. Suppressing my impatience, I asked, "Santino, why did you come looking for me tonight?" That trace of confusion slowly disappeared from his face. The familiar coldness returned to his eyes. He stared at me before asking word by word, "Was it you who had Augustina blacklisted?" Honestly, it took me several seconds to even remember who Augustina was. Then I recalled his recently publicized girlfriend, the female lead from his new movie, a completely irrelevant stranger I had already forgotten and tossed into the corners of my memory. And he came here for this? I let out a tired sigh. I truly felt exhausted. If before I had merely grown tired of the unequal dynamic in my relationship with Santino, now I was tired of him as a person. I wanted to explain, but before the words could leave my mouth, I became so angry I almost laughed instead. I looked at Santino quietly and asked in the calmest tone possible. Santino, during all the years we were together, honestly, have you ever actually seen me use my power to bully people? He instinctively fell silent. I continued. Maybe you should ask Teresa. She only announced she wanted to pursue you, and you immediately embarrassed her publicly. Santino, not everyone has as much patience as I do. After saying that, I turned to leave, but Santino suddenly called out behind me. Francesca, you're always like this. I turned back. Santino stood beneath the streetlight. Even standing in such bright light, he still somehow looked as though he belonged inside the shadows. Standing there, he remained just as handsome as the boy I first met years ago. When I looked at him, I still thought of the line that had once amazed me in my youth. A radiant white steed stands within the silent valley, with but a bundle of fresh grass. That graceful soul shines like jade. The image of that young boy still remained deep within my memories, but my heart would never again stir for him, not even the slightest bit. Chapter 13. Santino looked at me. I still couldn't read the emotions in his eyes. In all these years, I had never truly understood them, but whatever was there was always either indifference or hatred. He had never seemed to feel anything else toward me. I had clearly shown him a way out, yet it seemed he hadn't listened at all. It almost felt as though coming to me tonight to defend Augustina had merely been an excuse to see me. Even I found the thought absurd. Then I heard his voice. Francesca, you've always been like this. You become interested in something, then forcefully barge into its world, and once you stop liking it, you discard it without hesitation. You're a wealthy heiress standing high above everyone else. Anything you want comes easily to you. Countless people around you try to please you, make you happy, hand you whatever you desire. So the moment you showed even a little interest in me, endless people told me I should know my place and be grateful. They couldn't wait to present me to you like some kind of gift. When you liked me, you wanted the whole world to know, and once you stopped liking me, you threw me aside and handed me off to someone else like I was trash. After all, there are always new and interesting things around you. As long as you want something, there's nothing you can't have. So someone insignificant like me, you never once looked back, did you? No matter how desperately I tried to get your attention, you never once turned around to look at me. I quietly looked at him. He stared back expressionlessly, and only at this moment did I finally see the emotion hidden in Santino's eyes. There was indifference, there was hatred, but floating above that hatred was a faint shimmer of tears, like a thin layer of ice that would melt with just a single breath of warmth. I said, when you were 18 and wanted to make movies, I fought to secure a legendary IP for you. I begged my father to step in and personally invite famous actors to support your film. When you were 20 and filming deep in the mountains, I was still in school. The place you were filming was incredibly remote. No amount of money could make the journey easier. I had to transfer from planes to buses, then to donkey carts guided by locals. One trip alone took dozens of hours. Even so, I still went to see you at least twice every week because I worried you weren't eating or sleeping properly. When you were 21, a female actress from your production framed you and falsely accused you of assaulting her while drunk. Everyone called you a hypocrite. Nobody believed you. Even your fans turned against you and abandoned you. Your career and popularity hit rock bottom. But I stood beside you unwaveringly. I believed in you until I found evidence to clear your name and helped you stand back up again. When I turned 22, you remembered my birthday for the very first time and said you wanted to celebrate with me. I flew overnight from Shanghai to Paris. I waited outside your trailer the entire day, covered in mosquito bites. In the end, the message I received from you came after midnight had already passed. You told me you got busy attending a commercial event and forgot to tell me not to come. When you were 23, your film set suffered a mountain collapse. I rushed there without sleep and dug you out from beneath the rubble myself. When you woke up and saw my hands wrapped in bandages like a mummy, you frowned in disgust and told me not to come near you because you were germophobic and couldn't stand the sight of blood. There were too many moments like these. I truly didn't want to continue anymore. My eyes blurred faintly with tears, not for him, but for the younger version of myself who had thrown herself recklessly and wholeheartedly into love. Through my blurry vision, Santino's face looked terrifyingly pale. He looked as though he could barely stay standing. It seemed like he wanted to come forward and hold me, yet he didn't dare approach. I forced the tears back little by little before continuing coldly. Word by word. Santino. Ever since I was 16 years old, I placed a completely sincere heart in front of you like a fool, yet all you ever saw was the halo of me being a rich heiress, the girl who could have anything handed to her. But Santino, in all these years, have I ever forced you into anything? I told you countless times that if you didn't like me, you could reject me directly, but you accepted my kindness, you accepted my confession, and now you're telling me that you were just some insignificant sacrificial gift. So tell me honestly, Santino, in all these years between us, who was the one constantly compromising and accommodating whom? After saying that, I truly didn't want to look at him anymore. So I said, Santino, let's end this properly. I hope you never appear in front of me again. Chapter 14. I was still depressed for several days afterward. Lissandro probably wanted to cheer me up, so he took me to a horse ranch and gifted me a young foal. It had wet, shining eyes and a damp little nose. Very cute. I placed a sugar cube in my palm, and it stretched out its wet tongue to lick it. I was ticklish, so I finally laughed. Standing beside me, Lissandro quietly let out a breath of relief, as though he had finally stopped worrying. On our way back, we ran into Oberon with a female companion. At this point, he no longer bothered pretending. He looked at us coldly. In his eyes, Lissandro and I were on the same side now, which meant we were his enemies. Neither Lissandro nor I paid him any attention. Later, after drinking, screenshots of a chat conversation between Oberon and one of his sleazy friends were leaked and spread online as gossip. Someone had asked him whether he felt threatened since I seemed unusually close to his half-brother. Oberon's reply was arrogant. She's just damaged goods another man threw away. What's there to feel threatened about? Below that, he sent a video to his friend. I had no idea where he found it. It was footage from years ago, me covered in dirt, digging desperately through rubble with my bare hands to rescue Santino. The final scene showed me clutching the unconscious Santino while crying uncontrollably. Oberon smugly told his friend, "Trash like that? Let Lissandro, that idiot, take over and deal with her." The video spread rapidly. Later, I heard that Santino got into a car accident after becoming distracted while driving. He was rushed into intensive care and barely survived after several days of emergency treatment. 3 days after those chat logs were exposed, Oberon was thrown from a horse at his family ranch. Rumors said both his legs were broken. The outside world exaggerated the story dramatically. People whispered about brothers turning against each other. They claimed the one behind it all was the Hahn family's eldest son, Lissandro Hahn. During that period, I indeed didn't see Lissandro for some time. When I later visited the Hahn family residence, Lissandro was kneeling while receiving family punishment. I let out a cold laugh in front of Uncle Hahn. Not long afterward, before Oberon had even fully recovered, he was sent overseas. That pretty much destroyed any hope he had of inheriting the family business. See? In front of wealth and interest, even blood ties must step aside. Just like how Uncle Hahn, no matter how much he loved his younger son, still had to send him far away so he wouldn't remain in front of me as an eyesore. After that, life finally seemed to settle back onto the right track, and the day Lissandro confessed to me happened during the transition between late spring and early summer. The weather was perfect. The temperature was perfect. The humidity was perfect. Every flower bloomed at exactly the right moment. Before he even spoke, he laughed first and said, "Francesca, there's something I want to tell you." I replied, "I'd advise you not to." That only made him laugh again. I originally didn't plan to say anything. I wanted to wait for the right moment, until there were fewer business interests entangled between us. That way, maybe you'd believe my confession was sincere instead of suspecting ulterior motives or commercial intentions. I looked at him. He met my gaze directly. But I don't want to wait anymore. There are too many accidents in life. Too many unexpected changes. And there's already one idiot standing nearby as a cautionary example, watching you like a hawk and waiting for you to change your mind. I'm just afraid that if I wait too long, things will change. I'm not Santino. I won't mistake worthless things for treasures while overlooking what's truly precious right beside me. That's why I even have this opportunity today. I don't want to miss this chance because of hesitation. Francesca, maybe you don't believe that I like you. After all, our relationship began through business interests. I don't want to feed you empty lines about being hopelessly in love with you. but I'm confident that I'll be the best choice you could ever make. I'll give you my absolute loyalty and love. Every company asset can go under your name. I'll give you every sense of security you could possibly want. He looked at me, deep laughter hidden in his eyes, and within them, I saw my own reflection, bright, burning, alive. Then he said, Francesca, I'm not confessing because I expect an answer from you right now. I just want you to give me a chance to compete. My voice came out softly. You know I'm not interested in love anymore. If I choose a future partner, it'll only happen after a very long period of observation and careful consideration. In the end, I'll choose whichever option benefits me the most. He laughed, completely unconcerned, completely certain. I have an entire lifetime for you to observe me. Francesca, let's make a bet. In the end, the person who stays beside you until the very last moment will definitely be me. I laughed too. That's a pretty long-term bet. He asked, Are you afraid? I looked at him. If you're not afraid, then what do I have to fear? He concluded decisively. Then let's gamble on it. Francesca, a lifetime is long. That's what makes it interesting, isn't it? Yes, a lifetime was long. Life needed something interesting to make it worthwhile. And yet, a lifetime passed in the blink of an eye. The world changed with every passing year. This was an era where even videos had to be short and fast to keep people interested. Who would dare casually promise forever? But a little gamble didn't hurt. After all, in the end, the one who definitely wouldn't lose would be me.